Hey Matt, today I want to show you the Kreg Adaptive Cutting System table. I actually had a bunch of requests from you guys wanting to see me review this table when I was reviewing the Kreg track saw. So if you haven't seen the Kreg track saw review, I'll drop that in a link in the description below. And all the tools and supplies you see used in this video will also be down there as well. This video is brought to you by 731woodworks.com. Go check out our online store. We have easy to follow build plans to help you make awesome projects. If you use the code TABLE, I'll give you 20% off any order. So the table actually comes in two boxes. The top comes in one box, and then the leg assemblies with all the hardware comes in another box. Assembly was actually pretty straightforward, really good instructions, everything went together like it was supposed to. The only complaint I have is this tiny little wrench that they send is no good. It's just throw it away and get you a deep barrel socket to make your life easier. I actually put mine together with the little wrench, but only because I wanted to make sure I could do it with the tools they supplied. But you can, it's just makes life harder. This is the table. I'll get into the features of it in just a minute, but what I really want you to notice is how compact and how storable this thing is. If you're in a small shop, I'm in a garage, two-car garage, and I also have a home gym right there behind you that's crammed in here, and a CNC crammed in the corner, and a giant workbench in the middle. So space, I've created a space problem. This is perfect for situations like that, or if you just need to store it out of the way while your spouse or significant other needs to park their car in the garage. This is a good way to have a work table that you can actually store out of the way. But it's more than a work table. This thing has so many functions. Let me show you. Not only is it extremely compact when you're not using it, it also has handles and a wheel system so that you can actually roll it around in your shop or on the job site, whatever you're doing with it. These handles actually store out of the way. You can just push these little buttons and they fold down so they're not sticking out. Otherwise, they lock in place. There's also these little pieces here that help hold the legs tight to the table so that they're not flopping around during transport. And when you fold them out, they lock down in place as well. To store it back, you're just gonna push in this little tab and that releases this piece that previously locked into place. Once you have the legs extended, you can just roll it to wherever you want and then stand it up. One thing worth mentioning is on all 4 feet, it has these adjustable feet that you can screw in or out to adjust the levelness of your table if you're working on an unsteady surface. It also has these little pivoting feet that do help if it is like catching on a small grade or something like that. Of course, you can't have the stand sticking up here out of the way, so it has a little release switch and it folds down out of the way when not in use. This is actually meant to be used with the Kreg track saw, which is why this track is mounted on there. However, you can take that off easily by removing that knob, and then it folds up out of the way. You can take the other end off the exact same way. And when you put it back in place, because of the way we set it up, the instructions have you set it up, everything's gonna lock back in perfectly in the exact same spot where you took it off. Why does that matter? Well, that matters because you want to be able to cut a 90-degree to the table if you're cutting out 90-degree parts. So that's what that locks in at the same spot for. All right, so I've removed the track so you can see this is where the track attached to. You saw these hinges. This slot bolts on with this little bolt here, and you can see that it moves a little bit so that you can move it up, slide stock under it, and let it sit back down. These are actually out of the way now, so if I wanted to use this without a track, these aren't gonna be in my way and I can just leave those on there. Really simple, really easy and fast to put that track on there. So the table actually comes with a really nice, well-written manual, and Kreg has a very detailed video on how to set this thing up out of the box. So I don't want to bore you with all those details since it's already been well covered over there. I'm going to show you the features of the table and why I think it's awesome. The overall construction, it's basically aluminum and MDF, but it's really strong and it's not overly heavy. I really like how the heft of it, it's heavy enough that it doesn't move around on you, but it's not too heavy that it's too cumbersome to move around. It's kind of that sweet spot. The table comes with a whole bunch of extra add-ons straight out of the box, which makes it even that much better. You get these Versa stops, which actually stick down into the dog holes so that you can use them to support the material and keep them at a 90-degree angle when you're cutting them. You also use them to calibrate your track to the table. So if you've moved your table and you want to double check that the track is still square to the table, you just put these Versa stops in, lower your track, and if they are still touching, Like when you set it up originally, you make sure they're touching, then you tighten down those brackets on the end that keeps everything nice and square. You may also notice a little groove in the tabletop here. You actually cut that after you get everything set up, and you cut that line, and that gives you a zero clearance under the blade so that your blade can actually cut all the way through the material, and there's zero clearance under there, so there's less splintering on your material if you're cutting plywoods or even cross-cutting boards, things like that. It's just a really good idea. I like it. As far as these Versa stops, you actually get a tall and a short if you need different heights. On the tall ones and the short ones both, you'll notice that the part that goes into the hole is slimmer than the top, so it'll set on top of there. So it's got a positive stop when it sets in there. Because these things are all CNC drilled out, you know that all this stuff is exactly where it's supposed to be. So that means everything's going to be perfect as far as 90 goes if you set your track up right according to the instructions. So you can actually set 2 of those Versa stops in the hole, and then if I wanted to, say, trim that up, I could square this edge up. This would be square to this. Another thing worth pointing out is that you can put a Versa stop here and then put one in a diagonal line with it. If you lay your board up there, that's actually a 45 to where your saw blade will be running on the track. So you automatically have 45-degree miters built in just using the Versa stop, and you wouldn't have to use the miter gauge. If you have regular bench dogs or any type of bench dog accessory, those will fit in those holes as well. It also comes with these positive stops that you can use if you need to make repeatable cuts. So these positive stops run in these T-tracks on top of the table. There are gauges on each side. One of them is for under 10 inches, one is for more than 10 inches. It tells you how to set all that up in the manual. I've got these dialed in just right. If you want both of them to be the same and you're going to be using a longer piece of stock, you can move the measurement, or you can move these blocks to the same measurement on each one. And then this piece actually locks these 2 in together so that, so you can move them the same and kind of keep everything independent or less independent, although they do rack a little bit. So this piece to me is kind of not needed. What's actually pretty cool about these positive stocks is I can set this one to 8 inches. I can set this one to 6. And what that means is the stop is 6 inches from the edge of your track, or 8 inches, however you have it set. That way you know that that's the length of the cut. It's going to cut right there. So if I was cutting multiple pieces, say I had several pieces to cut at 8 inches, several at 6, and with the positive stops, I would be able to just make multiple cuts the same length without having to reset everything up. If you need to cut pieces longer than 25 inches, which is on here, then it has this extension rod that you can put in the back. That gives you up to 48 inches of measuring. It's not gonna hold this support anything out here because this thing it's just a piece of aluminum that's really flimsy. So if you're cutting something that's really wide and it has a whole lot of weight to the back, you're gonna need to support that in some way. Once you get this extension where you want it, get to the measurement you want, it has this piece on here that just locks it in place so it doesn't slip and move on you and knock your measurement off. So on the measurement, guys, these are just metal aluminum pieces that have markings printed on there somehow. But when you slide them in, you can actually push down right here and micro adjust those to get them dialed in exactly. And the way I did that is I just took my woodpecker's edge rule, lined it up with the kerf of where the blade cut, and then lined up the marks along the way on each side. Then if you're using this extension that goes up to 48 inches, it tells you right there, 48 extension mark, that's where you're gonna line that up to. So if we were going to 41, and now when the stock hits this is in line, everything's gonna be where you want it. What's great about the way it's built is the track is on hinges, so it actually lifts up. So like 3/4 inch plywood, I could slip under there and then I can just set the track down. Well, now it's setting flat or flush against that plywood. I love the fact that I can cut plywood on this thing, and because of the way the track has a splinter guard on it, the saw has a splinter guard on it, and it's zero clearance on the table, I get zero splintering and zero tear out on plywood. If you're working with something other than plywood, say a 2x6 like we have here, you just need to raise these hinges up to get the stock under the track. Do that on both ends. You can actually use this track and track saw with this table to joint the edge of your board. So if you don't have a jointer, this is a great way to joint those edges. You'll get a perfect 90-degree cut there. You'll also get a nice smooth cut with no splintering. Now, if you want to make a good square cross cut, you're just going to use those Versa stops, put those in a couple of those holes, push that freshly jointed or cut edge up against those, and now those are 90 degrees to your track, and you can make the cross cut. It also comes with this handy dandy miter gauge. So if you need to cut miters on your stock, or you need to cut bevels, not bevels, tapers, then this would be a good option to have on there. This has a scale from 0 to 60 degrees, and it's micro adjustable if you need to dial that in. Really easy to use. You're just going to loosen off that little screw there. It also, these two screws run inside that T-track. It can be a little finicky to get inside the track, and once you get it in there, it's there. From there, you can just adjust this from 60 all the way back to 90 or 0. So if you're trying to make 45-degree cuts, you'll move it till the needle shows 45, and then we'll tighten it down, make a cut. You can snug those down so that this doesn't move. It's going to give you good support to your work or your stock. And then we'll make this cut and check the 45 on it. There's a whole lot to like about this table. I like how easy it is to set up. I like how the track and the track saw work with it. And it's just always perfect 90-degree angle. I like the Versa stops. I like that it has these positive stops, and I like that it has these built-in measuring on top of the table. Now, what do I not like? These pieces here are plastic. While they're the good Kreg plastic. So if you've got a Kreg K5, this is basically the same type of plastic. So it's a good quality plastic, but it's still plastic. This miter gauge could use a little robustness, I think, while it works okay. If I'm cutting miters, I'm probably gonna go to the miter saw. As far as these positive stops, they work perfectly well. I mean, they're plastic too, but for the intended purpose, they work well. If they were metal, it would be better, but these are just fine. This extension thingamajig is a little jinkier. I feel like this is gonna get bent pretty quick. These wrenches that they supply, they don't stay on the bolt heads tight. They slip really easily. And they're off, they're not exactly right. They're not the right size. So if they fix that, that would be awesome. They work, it's just aggravating. Another thing I don't really care for that I think would be better if this slot all the way around has these, it's almost a T-track. Well, I guess it is a T-track. It's just not standard T-track size, it's smaller. So your standard T-track fittings like these T-track clamps and things like that just won't fit in the track under normal circumstances. You'd need a smaller bolt head size or a smaller T-track size fitting to go in there. Setting up is fast, putting it away is fast. The only thing that I wish was a little different was these tabs that you push in to collapse everything. Sometimes those little plastic pieces that are covering the metal push pin, they're hard to push in, or they get moved and you don't actually push them when you thought you were going to. And if you're not careful, you will pinch the far, that's Southern for fire, you will pinch the far out of your finger. It'll hurt. And if you ever forget how to set it up, you get a sticker and you can put on the bottom of your table to tell you how to do it. All in all, it's a pretty good system. I'd like to thank Kreg for sending me this table after so many of you requested me do a review on it. They were kind enough to send me the table to check out. Thank you, Kreg. So you're essentially getting a very versatile work system, including a table on wheels with a track and a track saw for less than $1,000. And that's a really good deal for all that you can do with this system. I mean, you can cut miters, you can joint with it, you can cut sheet goods with it, you can make repeatable cuts with it. It's just a really cool system that they've come up with. Is it perfect? No. Is it awesome? Absolutely. If you like this video, go check out the Kreg track saw review I did a few weeks ago. Click on that box right there will take you to it. Click the box, get the big old virtual fist pump. Also, another one of my favorite tool reviews right there. Thank you for watching.